Have you ever found yourself replaying old conversations, wondering what went wrong, or waiting for a message that never comes? It's as if someone has set up residence in your mind, and no matter how hard you try, you can't evict them. When someone lingers in your thoughts without communication, it means something deeper is happening. It could be love, unfinished business, or even a story you've told yourself about what could have been. But here's the truth. Silence carries its own message. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. We are taught from an early age that strength means having a thick skin, that showing emotions is a weakness, and that guarding our hearts will protect us from pain. But the truth is, real strength comes from being open, honest, and willing to feel, especially when it's uncomfortable. When someone lingers in your thoughts without communication, it can stir up emotions you might not want to face. Longing, uncertainty, regret, or even rejection. It's easy to suppress these feelings, to distract yourself, or to convince yourself that if you just ignore them long enough, they'll disappear. But ignoring emotions doesn't make them go away, it only buries them deeper, where they quietly shape your decisions, beliefs, and even your self-worth. Vulnerability asks something different of us. It asks us to be brave enough to sit with those feelings instead of running from them. It challenges us to ask, why is this person still in my mind? What is unresolved within me? Sometimes the answer is love, other times it's unfinished conversations, unanswered questions, or a version of ourselves we were when we were with them. To be vulnerable means allowing ourselves to acknowledge these feelings without shame. It means giving ourselves permission to grieve the loss of a relationship, even if no one else understands why it mattered so much. It means admitting that we miss someone, that we wish things had been different, or that we are struggling to let go. And perhaps most importantly, vulnerability means allowing ourselves to move forward with honesty and grace, rather than pretending we are unaffected. Many people fear vulnerability because it feels like handing someone else the power to hurt us. But in reality, vulnerability gives us power. The power to own our emotions instead of letting them own us. It allows us to have real conversations instead of making assumptions, to find closure instead of staying stuck, and to choose healing over avoidance. If someone is always in your mind but absent from your life, vulnerability offers you two paths: reaching out to seek clarity or accepting what is and allowing yourself to heal. Either choice requires courage, but both lead to freedom. The hardest but most beautiful lesson of vulnerability is this: feeling deeply is not a weakness. It is proof that you are human, that you have loved, and that you are capable of growing beyond your pain. And that is where true strength begins. Our minds are natural storytellers. When faced with uncertainty, we create narratives to fill in the blanks. It's how we make sense of the world, how we find meaning in chaos, and how we protect ourselves from pain. But sometimes the stories we tell ourselves are not based on truth. They are built on fear, longing, and the need for closure where none exists. When someone is always in your mind without communication, your brain tries to explain why. You start imagining reasons for their silence. Maybe they miss me too, but are afraid to reach out. Maybe they're just busy and will come back when the time is right. Maybe they're testing me to see if I'll make the first move. These are the stories we construct to make sense of the silence. The problem is, these stories are rarely based on fact. They are shaped by our emotions, our insecurities, and our deepest fears. If you've ever found yourself checking your phone repeatedly, replaying old conversations, or analyzing their last words for hidden meanings, you've fallen into the trap of storytelling. You're not dealing with reality, you're dealing with the version of reality you've created in your mind. Why do we do this? Because uncertainty is uncomfortable. The human brain craves closure. When we don't have answers, we make them up. We would rather believe a comforting lie than sit with the discomfort of not knowing. But here's the truth. Just because we believe a story doesn't make it real. So how do we break free from these narratives? First, we must recognize them. Ask yourself, is this story based on facts or am I making assumptions? Am I interpreting silence as something it may not be? What proof do I have that what I'm telling myself is true? Second, challenge the story. If someone truly wanted to talk to you, wouldn't they have reached out by now? If they cared as much as you hope they do, wouldn't they make an effort? Instead of making excuses for their absence, try shifting the perspective. Maybe they have moved on and maybe I need to as well. Third, rewrite the story in a way that serves you. Instead of telling yourself, they are thinking about me but just not reaching out, tell yourself, their silence is my answer. I deserve someone who chooses me, not someone I have to wonder about. We cannot control whether someone communicates with us, but we can control how we interpret their silence. When we stop clinging to imaginary narratives and start embracing reality, we give ourselves the freedom to move forward. The most powerful story you will ever tell yourself is the one where you are enough without needing someone else's validation. Courage is often associated with grand, heroic acts, the kind that requires physical strength or bold action. But one of the most difficult yet least acknowledged forms of bravery is emotional courage. It is the ability to confront uncomfortable truths, face uncertainty without retreating, and take action despite fear. Emotional courage is what allows us to be honest with ourselves, to communicate openly, and to let go when we must. When someone is always in your mind but absent from your life, emotional courage asks you to do something that many of us avoid, to stop waiting for answers that may never come and take control of your own healing. This is not easy. The mind naturally clings to hope, replaying old memories, searching for signs that they still care. The longer we hold on to someone in our thoughts, the harder it becomes to separate our emotions from reality. So what does emotional courage look like in this situation? 1, the courage to be honest with yourself. The first step is acknowledging how you truly feel without sugarcoating or denying it. Are you still holding on to a relationship that no longer exists? Are you waiting for someone to return who has shown no intention of doing so? Are you afraid to admit that you need to let go because it feels like giving up? It's easy to tell yourself that you're fine, that you don't care, or that their absence doesn't hurt. But true healing begins when you can say, yes, this hurts. Yes, I miss them, but I cannot stay stuck in this place forever. 2. The courage to reach out or walk away. Silence is heavy. It leaves us wondering, assuming, and sometimes suffering. Emotional courage means making a choice. Either you reach out for clarity or you choose to accept the silence as your answer. If you reach out, do so with honesty, not with expectation. Say what you need to say, whether it's expressing your feelings, asking for closure, or simply acknowledging that you still care. But be prepared for any response, or no response at all. If they don't answer, that itself is an answer. On the other hand, if you recognize that reaching out will only bring more pain, emotional courage means choosing yourself instead. It's understanding that you don't need closure from them. You can give it to yourself. It means saying, I deserve someone who chooses me, not someone I have to chase. 3, the courage to sit with discomfort. Letting go is painful. Moving on feels like losing a part of yourself, especially when someone has occupied your mind for so long. There will be days when you want to reach out, when memories come flooding back, when you wonder if they ever think of you. Emotional courage is the ability to sit with that discomfort without running from it. Most people try to numb these feelings, through distractions, unhealthy habits, or diving into another relationship too quickly. But real healing comes from allowing yourself to feel, process, and then release those emotions. The only way out is through. 4, the courage to choose yourself when someone lingers in your thoughts but not in your life. The biggest lesson emotional courage teaches you is self-worth. It's about realizing that your value is not determined by who stays or who leaves. It's about recognizing that you deserve more than mixed signals, unanswered messages, and one-sided longing. Choosing yourself means redirecting the energy you've been giving to someone else back to yourself. It means investing in your growth, your happiness, and your future. It means refusing to live in the past and making space for what's meant for you. Silence is not just the absence of words, it is a language of its own, and often it speaks the loudest in the spaces between people. The things we don't say, the feelings we suppress, the conversations we avoid, all of these create distance, misunderstanding, and unresolved emotions that linger far longer than they should. When someone is always in your mind, but there is no communication, there is a cost to that silence, a cost we don't always realize until it is too late. 1, the weight of unspoken feelings. How many times have you replayed a conversation in your head, wishing you had said something different? How many moments have passed where you wanted to reach out, but fear held you back? The weight of unspoken words is heavy. It keeps us stuck in a cycle of regret, always wondering, what if? What if you had told them how you really felt? What if you had asked the hard questions instead of making assumptions? What if you had chosen honesty over pride? These are the questions that haunt us, not because we lack answers, but because we never gave ourselves the chance to find them. Silence may feel safe in the moment, but over time, it can become suffocating. The emotions we avoid do not disappear. They settle inside us, shaping the way we see ourselves and our relationships. 2. The pain of assumption. When communication is absent, the mind fills in the gaps. We assume someone is ignoring us when they might be struggling with their own battles. We assume they don't care when they might be just as afraid to reach out. We assume they've moved on while we are still stuck in the past. But assumptions are not facts, and yet they have the power to create resentment, disappointment, and unnecessary pain. The longer we go without clarity, the more distorted our thoughts become. And suddenly, a relationship that could have been repaired turns into something irreversibly broken, not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. The missed opportunity for closure. Closure is something we crave as humans. We want to understand why things ended the way they did. We want answers, explanations, a sense of finality. But too often, we wait for closure to come from someone else when, in reality, closure is something we can create for ourselves. The mistake many people make is thinking that if they don't talk about it, the feelings will fade on their own. But silence does not erase emotions. It simply buries them. And buried emotions have a way of resurfacing when we least expect them. Years later, in a new relationship, in a quiet moment, when we think we've finally moved on. Speaking your truth, even if it doesn't change the outcome, is powerful. It allows you to take ownership of your emotions instead of being controlled by them. Whether it's a conversation for clarity, an apology you never gave, or a simple acknowledgement of how you feel, words have the power to release what silence holds hostage. 4, the risk of losing a connection that matters. Sometimes we assume we will always have time. We think I'll reach out later, or they know how I feel, or if they cared, they would say something first. But time is unpredictable, and relationships, no matter how strong, can fade when left unattended. How many friendships have been lost because both people were too stubborn to speak first? How many relationships ended not because of a lack of love, but because of a lack of communication? How many people have left this world with words still unspoken? One of the greatest regrets people have is not telling the people they care about how much they meant to them while they had the chance. Love, appreciation, forgiveness, these things should never be left unsaid, because one day the opportunity to say them may no longer exist. 5, the strength in choosing to speak. It takes courage to be the one to break the silence, to say I miss you, to ask what happened, to apologize if needed, or to seek the truth even when it might hurt. But there is power in vulnerability. There's freedom in saying what's on your heart without expectation, simply because it deserves to be said. Speaking does not always guarantee the response you want. The other person may not be ready to talk, they may not feel the same, or they may have already moved on. But communication is not just about getting a response. It's about giving yourself permission to express what's inside you. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give ourselves is the ability to walk away knowing we did our part, that we said what we needed to say, that we left no room for regret. At the heart of every relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or professional, is a fundamental truth. The way others treat us is often a reflection of what we accept. If someone is always in your mind but not in your life, the real question is not about them, it's about you. Do you believe you deserve more than uncertainty? Do you value yourself enough to set boundaries that protect your heart, your time, and your peace? Self-worth and boundaries go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. If you truly understand your worth, you won't tolerate inconsistent communication, one-sided efforts, or relationships that leave you feeling emotionally drained. And if you have strong boundaries, you naturally protect your self-worth by refusing to settle for anything less than what you deserve. But knowing this and acting on it are two very different things. Many people struggle to enforce boundaries because they fear losing someone. They think, if I pull away, will they forget about me? Or if I stop reaching out, will they ever notice? But what we often fail to realize is that the people meant for us will always respect our boundaries. Because real love, real friendship, and real connection are never one-sided. Understanding your self-worth. Self-worth is not about arrogance or entitlement. It is not about thinking you are better than others or expecting perfection. Self-worth is a deep, unwavering belief that you deserve love, respect, and reciprocity. It is understanding that you should never have to beg for someone's time, attention, or affection. If someone is always in your thoughts but has made no effort to be in your life, ask yourself, am I valuing their presence more than they value mine? Am I holding on to the idea of them rather than the reality of our relationship? Do I truly believe I deserve a connection that is mutual, healthy, and fulfilling? When you begin to recognize your worth, your mindset shifts. Instead of asking, why don't they want me? You start asking, why am I investing so much energy in someone who isn't investing in me? And that change in perspective is powerful too. The role of boundaries in protecting your energy boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They are guidelines that define what is acceptable in your life and what isn't. They are a form of self-respect, a way of saying, I love and value myself enough to not allow situations or people who drain me. If you find yourself constantly thinking about someone who doesn't communicate with you, it may be time to set a boundary, mentally, emotionally, or even physically. That could mean stopping the habit of checking their social media to see if they're thinking about you, resisting the urge to initiate conversations with someone who never initiates first, letting go of false hope and accepting that their silence is an answer in itself, deciding that your time and emotional energy are too valuable to be wasted on uncertainty. Boundaries are not about punishing the other person. They are about prioritizing yourself. When you enforce boundaries, you shift the focus from will they come back to how do I move forward? 3 dynamics that we can struggle to set boundaries. Many people know they need boundaries, but they hesitate to enforce them. Why? Because boundaries come with discomfort. They require us to step into the unknown, to risk losing people, to let go of familiar patterns, even when those patterns are unhealthy. Some common fears that prevent us from setting boundaries include fear of being alone. We hold on to toxic or inconsistent relationships because we fear loneliness more than we fear being mistreated. Fear of confrontation. We avoid difficult conversations because we don't want to make things awkward or uncomfortable. Fear of rejection. We think that if we ask for more effort, more consistency, more respect, we might push the other person away. But here's the truth. The people who truly care about you will never leave just because you set a boundary. The ones who disappear when you start valuing yourself were only there because you allowed them to be. 4, learning to walk away with confidence. One of the hardest but most necessary acts of self-worth is learning to walk away from people who don't treat you with the love, respect, and consideration you deserve. Not everyone in your life is meant to stay. Some people are lessons, some are experiences, and some were never meant to be more than a passing chapter. Walking away does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you pretend the connection never mattered. It simply means you choose yourself instead of choosing to wait for someone who may never come back. If someone is always in your mind but never in your life, it's time to ask yourself, is this connection lifting me up or weighing me down? Am I growing by holding on, or am I losing myself in the process? Do I want love, or do I just want validation from someone who isn't choosing me? When you answer these questions honestly, the path becomes clearer. 5, choosing yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. Many people hesitate to set boundaries because they worry about being selfish. They think, what if I'm being unfair? Or what if they just need more time? But choosing yourself is not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You cannot keep waiting for someone who has already walked away. When you set boundaries, you are not shutting people out. You are making room for the right people to come in. People who see your worth without you having to prove it. People who make you feel loved, valued, and secure without you constantly questioning where you stand. At the core of everything, our relationships, our choices, our happiness, is one simple truth. We accept the love we believe we deserve. When someone is always in your mind but not in your life, it is not just about them, it is about you, about the standards you set, the boundaries you enforce, and the way you choose to honor yourself. Silence and unspoken words have a cost. They leave us trapped in assumptions, regret, and unresolved emotions. But emotional courage, the willingness to face reality, to express what needs to be said, and to walk away when necessary, sets us free. Self-worth is not about demanding love from the wrong people. It's about recognizing that you don't have to. The right people, the ones who truly see and value you, will never leave you questioning where you stand. And when you stop chasing those who are indifferent, you make room for those who will cherish you effortlessly. So if you find yourself holding on to someone who does not hold on to you, ask yourself, is this love or is it just a habit? Is this connection real or is it a fantasy built on unspoken hopes? You deserve clarity. You deserve effort. You deserve peace. And most of all, you deserve to choose yourself without guilt, without hesitation and without waiting for someone else to see the worth that has always been within you.